All right, welcome to Countdown 2019. It's 9 minutes past 4 at 99.3 Nigeria Info, where we discuss all the big and significant issues on the road to the 2019 general elections. This is the Ideas segment with Ayobe, and you can follow the program on Twitter at Countdown 2019NG, at Rotimi Sankore, at Ideas Radio NG. You can also follow the program. We're speaking with the presidential candidate of the Alliance for New Nigeria, Fela Durotoye. Remember, you can also tweet different handles on Twitter where you got questions and we've got comments. You can have that there also. I'll let you into the WhatsApp number also too. It's 0809 597 5805. And so, here we go. Ayobe, good evening.
Good evening, Aroho, and Rotimi, my co-presenter, but in particular, welcome to the very much campaigning and vigorously and actively campaigning candidate of the Alliance for New Nigeria, Mr. Fela Durotoye. You're welcome to the Ideas section.
Thank you so much, Ayo. I'm always happy to be here at Nigeria Info.
Well, what we focus on here in this section of the program is the issues of integrity, ethics and accountability and the role that they play in our democracy. And I just wonder, in the context of Nigerian politics, and as one of those who is seen as, I don't want to use the term new breed, but people who have a new approach to doing politics, how do you think you've been able to not so much to talk about those issues, but to actually reflect them in the way that you've been campaigning, the way that you've declared your campaign, the way you emerged as the candidate, and how you intend to go forward with those ideals?
Okay, thank you very much, Ayo and Rotimi, and everyone who's listening. I believe very strongly that there is no nation that can really become a strong nation without people of integrity leading their government. Because integrity really is about promise keeping. And you know how it works with what it seems like Nigerian politicians, that they're good, they make promises and they're extremely great at breaking them. In fact, many people say things like they don't even mean the promises when they make them. Well, I believe that as a person who has promoted integrity as a value system for the last close to 14, 15 years into the national psyche of Nigerians, someone who myself has done everything I have or I can to lead by integrity and accountability. One of the things that helped me to choose the party Alliance for New Nigeria was the values that the party professed. And there were three values: transparency, integrity, and excellence. So in a sense, first of all, my choice of a party was based on the values of integrity. But then one other interesting thing is that I believe that I'm probably the only candidate, I'm not sure about this, but it's really there to be checked, that has posted our budgets for our campaign literally almost every month, and also posted our expenses every month. Mm-hmm. And what we've done with that, and I think a lot of people realize that these guys are not just talking transparency. You can see how much we spend on food, how much we spend on accommodation, what we spend everything on. So also, I mean, like one of the other things is I'm not a signatory to the Fela Durotoye support initiative, right? And it took us 10 weeks to register that trustee account, So whilst people were ready to give to us and to start our campaign, we had to wait 10 weeks because we wanted to do it right, to be able to be sure that we had the right kind of corporate what do I call it? Corporate status, yes, to be able to receive.
But when you talk about your corporate status and the need to register, did you find that was a smooth process, or did you find that there were any obstacles in your way?
Well, it was a smooth process, but it's just a lengthy process. So, for instance, even when you've gone through the registration, and that's because it's you've got to have trustees as opposed to just shareholders, because you can't take anything from that account. It's specifically for the campaign, and it's
one should assume that if you are setting up an organization like that, it's not just that a flash in the pan for 2019?
Oh no, not at all. You've got to set it up for the long haul. And for me, I think that was very important that we got it right from the beginning. Even though, like I said, it took us literally the delay of 10 weeks in starting, and you can imagine what 10 weeks is like in a campaign.
Well, the reason why I asked about whether you found the process smooth is because that particular aspect of it may have been smooth. But candidates have found that whilst they may have decided to adopt the high road, that the powers that be, those who are in power or those who think that everybody else is a distraction from their own campaign, have not been quite so accommodating. If the other sides or the other sides go low, what do? You go
high, in the words of Michelle Obama. But I'll tell you something very interesting, Ayo. The day that I decided that I was going to run, and I actually, broke the news to my kids, I promised them something. I said I would never do anything that I would not be able to stand and tell them proudly, and I would not do anything that would make them ashamed of their dad. And I have kept that. So basically what I said when, publicly was, I will not do anything to violate my values, not even to win an election. And there's a reason why, Ayo. Because, if you are who you are, your values define who you are. And to a large extent, if you violate your values, even if you win the election, you still lost yourself. So in the end, you still lost. And then if you lose the election and you lost yourself on the values, then that's a tragedy. Yes. But if you lose an election, but you keep yourself, you've learned something, and you've learned how to make things better without necessarily, compromising your values. And if you do win the election and you kept yourself, then you have an amazing story to tell. And for me, that is really the story that it's going to be. It's going to be that Fela never touched one kobo for campaign funding for
when
his
you
sperms.
say you have an amazing story to tell, I mean, your supporters, they don't want to hear your amazing story of the campaign.
Oh, yes.
They want to hear that you have won.
No, not my supporters. My supporters are the kind of people who understand that it is possible for one person to win and all of us will still lose, as we have been losing all through the our elected history. We call it this thing that it's a syndrome that is called elect and regret, where one person wins, but because we got the wrong person in there or the parties do not hold themselves to the right values, then in the end our economy suffers, the people suffer, so we all lose. So I think we've come to a point where now people are looking for integrity. It means something to them, especially those who typically do not get involved with the political process. If you look at it, Ayo, in 2015, 96 million people were above the age of 18, but only 28 million votes were counted,
yes.
Which means that 68 million people did not get involved with the process. Most of them just didn't think that the process had any integrity in it. They didn't think their votes will count.
But do you think that's why they didn't vote?
No, for many reasons. But most of the time there was also the fact that they didn't believe in the candidates, they didn't believe in the political parties, they didn't believe in any ideology of those parties, and by experience, they had lost hope. So there are many reasons, but it all still anchors around the fact that they do not see the values that they wish to see in themselves and to pass on to their children in the political system. And I'm sure that that's what we've done differently, that has now today energized a whole 23 million new voters to come out. And I think, I'm not sure whether Ruti will agree with this, but this is the largest number of new voters in any electoral cycle. And we worked hard to get this to be done. I'm not saying it's all me, but we know that the process was not easy. Many people had to wake up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. because they were looking for something different. And a lot of people say, Fela, we find that in you. And it's not just about who you are right now. It's who we've known you to always be. You've been a proponent of values. You've helped to share values over the last 12, 13 years. One of the core values that I've been pushing into Nigeria's psyche and through Nigerian schools is something called do the right thing at all times, regardless of who is doing the wrong thing. Another value statement that we push is live a life of integrity and honor. So you see that today is not now. It's not because of elections that I'm trying to do that. These values that I'm speaking to you about, I have pushed into over 300 schools across Nigeria. Okay. The Association of Private Educators of Nigeria have endorsed those values. Okay. Anambra State government has endorsed those values. So we've been pushing this for a long time. Values has been one of my big things, and I'm living them out.
Okay. I think that one thing that I just wanted to go back to, because you mentioned it earlier, which is about politicians making promises and not keeping them. And I was just looking at some of the things that you said. Don't you think that when you say, for example, that you're going to degrade and dismantle and defeat the terrorist group Boko Haram, or that you are going to, you're going to increase the literacy rate by up to 90%. Now, these are undoubtedly very noble aspirations, but when you make them as promises and then you get into office and you come up slap bang against the Nigerian Union of Teachers or some other interest group, or simply the sheer scale of the problem, do you then say that being unable to deliver everything means that you are no longer a person of integrity? I mean, don't you think that it's a bit harsh to be saying that once a politician makes a promise that they can't keep, then that they are not a person of integrity?
No, okay. So let me start by saying that, there was a post I put out in 2015. And that post, really, I think I put it out on Twitter. And I said, promises may be hard to keep, but integrity makes it harder to break promises. And that's really what the whole portion.
But if the thing is not within your full control.
Yeah, so this is where I'm coming from. The lack of integrity usually starts with the intention. I talk about integrity being the alignment of your thoughts, your words, and your actions. And that many times people without integrity say the things they don't mean. And many times the people without integrity do things that are different from what they said intentionally. And so is it possible that a person of integrity would say to you, I'll be with you at 6 o'clock, and not be there at 6 o'clock? Yes. But you would know that that person did everything humanly possible to be there at 6. And more importantly, the most likely they would probably have called, if they could call, to say, I'm so sorry. So what I'm trying to say here is that most of the time, the lack of integrity is the desire, or the lack of it, to keep your promises. In other words, don't make empty promises you don't intend to keep.
But even if you make a promise, for example, let's take the promise of putting a functioning healthcare center into each of the local governments. Now, that sounds, it should be within the gift of the federal government if you were to become the president. So, in theory, it's doable. But in practice, where are the personnel to make those health centers really functioning? Have you done the kind of studies of where the students are coming out, who they are going to be, how much you're going to have to pay them to tempt them to certain local governments and so on? Or is it just that you say, well, we should have one in each, so let's just put it there? I mean, really,
no.
Are these promises
first of all,
researched?
Yes,
Really
absolutely. And they were researched for months, literally over a year. We've had a policy team of experts who are in those fields. So when we talk about healthcare policies and whatever promises we're making, they are made by people who have researched them, and most of them literally are in the healthcare sector. When we talk about, let me just tap on something that you said. How do we make sure that we have the personnel? And one of the things that we've realized is that, first of all, 90% of the diseases that are killing Nigerians today are mostly diseases that should have been treated at the primary healthcare level. And today, the world has gone beyond trying to use medical doctors as primary healthcare providers. Now they are using what you call paramedics, right? And paramedics are people who literally you train to be able to deal with most of the diseases that you have there, and then when they find out that this thing, like they say in Nigeria, if this one pass me, refer them to a secondary healthcare, and that's really what this is about. In other words, you don't need to be a medical doctor 7 years trained to be able to become a paramedic, and just by being able to do what it is we're talking about, you can imagine that we will be able to provide a lot of jobs, in that sphere, just by training people to be paramedics. Some of those paramedics are people they may not even be able to speak in they have to be able to speak in the language of
the community. Well, before we go, because we're practically out of time, but there was one thing that I wanted to take up, and I know that Rotimi is going to come back to this, but you participated in the pact, which was to see amongst several of the non-quote and unquote major parties whom of the aspirants at that time would be supported as the sole candidate, and almost like a coalition that would be formed. And at the end of you had a debate. You agreed on a procedure by which that sole candidate would emerge. You had a debate, and at the end of the debate, you emerged as the sole candidate. And yet, after that, it turned out that not everybody who had signed up to that pact was ready to now abide by it because they had not emerged. And I wonder, when you are reported now as being ready to still talk about coalition and having one candidate, I don't want to call you the also-rans because it's a bit prejudgmental, and we never know what the 23 million Nigerians who are coming into the electoral space are going to do. But I just say the non-major parties. What now you're talking about still having some kind of pact with these groups, and you also know that some of your fellow parties are in the CUPP, which involves one of the major parties. So, if we're talking, don't these sorts of things depend on trust? And of course, trust is a matter of integrity. How do you go into such discussions knowing what happened before?
Well, you hope for the best, okay? And you're right.
Well, you're hoping for the best.
Oh, yeah.
You need more strategy than that.
No. To be honest, you cannot do more than hope that anybody that you're going into coalition with will honor their signature on a memorandum of understanding. Mm-hmm. You can't. I can't coerce anybody to it, right? And you just hope that everybody keeps their word. Let me just quickly put something that is very important out there, and that's the fact that there were 10 people that eventually, took an election, not a debate, but an election amongst ourselves to pick the consensus candidate. And 9 of us are still together.
Okay.
So 8 people, are still behind Fela. Okay. There was only one person, Professor Kingsley Moghalu, who went through the process and then pulled out. And he said it clearly on some other, he pulled out because he didn't win. He has the right to. But I guess the only painful thing is that sometimes he's cast aspersion on a process that he helped to design. He's cast, aspersions in a way on the persons that were involved, and of course even on the person of Mrs. Obiezekwe-Sili, who was just really an arbiter who just came in to oversee the process. She didn't design the process. Mm-hmm. She just came to say, and that has been very painful. But you know what? Leadership is more than an emotional decision. Mm-hmm. We understand that to be able to get our nation forward, we need a coalition of people, and that is sometimes you have to be able to say, whatever has happened has happened. Let's hope that this time around it will not happen again, and we'll try and make it.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Fela Durotoye, for coming on and giving us your perspective from the ideas point of view. I think that's all I'm going to poke my nose into now. Please remember to follow the program on @IdeasRadioNG, and you can also check out our website where we try to post the videos and podcasts